The lecture hall on Proxima 7 station buzzed with quiet chatter as 200 cadets filed in through the wide doors. The room was massive, designed to accommodate species of all sizes. Velrathi cadets with their feathered sensor arrays took seats near the front, while the larger Dravic warriors claimed the back rows where the reinforced chairs could handle their weight. Scattered throughout were Quillix cadets, their small frames and moth-like features making them look delicate compared to their classmates. Jinho entered with a group of Velrathi students, keeping his movements careful and controlled. He had learned over the past 3 months to walk differently, to sit with less force, to make himself appear smaller than he really was. His uniform was specially tailored to hide the dense muscle underneath, and he kept his posture slightly slouched to match the weaker gravity tolerance of those around him. He slid into a seat in the 3rd row next to Minho, a Velrathi who had become his closest friend at the academy. Minho's sensor feathers twitched in greeting, a sign of casual friendship among his people. "Another safety lecture," Minho said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard Galactic. "I heard this one is about dangerous species. Should be interesting at least." Jinho nodded and pulled out his datapad, ready to take notes. He had been careful these past months. So very careful. Every movement calculated, every response measured. The isolation was exhausting, but necessary. He was not just a cadet. He was a test case for an entire species. The lights dimmed as Commander Vaxil entered from the side door. The Velrathi officer was old by their standards, his sensor feathers graying at the tips, but he moved with the confidence of someone who had seen real combat. 4 tours of duty in the outer sectors, Jinho had heard. The commander had encountered nearly every hostile species in known space. Cadets. Vaxil's voice carried easily through the hall without amplification. Today we discuss why you must understand xenobiology. Not for academic interest, but for survival. The galaxy is not a safe place. There are species out there that can kill you in ways you cannot imagine. The holographic display behind him flickered to life, showing a star map with red zones marking dangerous territories. Vaxil began with the basics, explaining classification systems for hostile species. Class 1 through 5 were standard threats, animals, and primitives. Class 6 through 10 were sentient species with aggressive tendencies, but manageable with proper protocols. Then the display changed to show a creature that made several cadets gasp. It was a Krath, caught mid-lunge by the camera. Acid dripped from its mandibles, and its 6 eyes reflected no mercy. Class 11, Vaxil said. The Krath. Acid blood, natural armor plating, and a neurotoxin that can paralyze most species in seconds. Native to a high-gravity world with sulfuric rain. They feel no pain as we understand it, and can continue fighting even with catastrophic injuries. The next image showed a Dravic warrior in full combat stance, all 6 arms holding weapons. This one was even larger than the Dravic cadets in the back row. Also Class 11, Dravics from the War Worlds. 6 arms, each capable of independent action. Redundant organs, enhanced strength, bred for thousands of generations specifically for combat. Respect them, fear them, but understand they can be reasoned with. They have honor codes and clear motivations. Vaxil paused, his sensor feathers flattening against his head in a gesture that Jinho had learned meant serious concern. The holographic display went dark for a moment, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Now we come to Class 12, the commander said quietly. There are only 3 species in this classification. 3 species in all of known space that are so dangerous. First contact protocols require military escorts and maximum caution. The display showed a planet. Blue oceans, green and brown continents, white clouds swirling in atmospheric patterns. It looked almost peaceful, beautiful even. Several cadets murmured in confusion. It looked like a garden world, the kind scientists dreamed of retiring to. Earth, Axel said. Classification, Deathworld Extreme. Gravity, 1.0 g, which is 30% higher than galactic standard. Atmospheric oxygen content, 21%, which is toxic to many species over extended exposure. Atmospheric pressure at sea level, 101 kilopascals. Surface temperature range, -89 to 57 degrees Celsius. Native predator species count, over 15,000 documented, estimated total over 50,000. The numbers scrolled across the screen as Vaxil continued. Jinho kept his expression neutral, but inside, his heart was pounding. He had known this lecture was coming. Every cadet received it during their first year. But hearing his home world described like a nightmare was harder than he had expected. Everything on this planet evolved to kill, Vaxil said. The plants are toxic. The insects carry diseases. The weather patterns include electrical storms with billions of volts, rotating wind columns that can destroy buildings, and frozen water falling from the sky at terminal velocity. The oceans contain predators the size of our cargo ships. And that is just the environment. The display changed again, and Gino felt his stomach tighten. It showed a human. Not a specific human, just a generic model based on scan data. But it was clearly meant to inspire fear. The image highlighted the forward-facing eyes, the predator's gaze. It marked the dense bone structure, the thick muscles, the redundant systems. Humans, the commander said, and the word hung in the air like a curse. The dominant species of Earth. They have only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, and already they have spread to 17 colony worlds. They are persistence hunters, evolved to chase prey across distances until it collapses from exhaustion. Their endurance is unmatched in known space. A healthy human can maintain physical activity for hours without rest. More statistics appeared. Jinho knew them by heart, but seeing them displayed like a threat profile was disturbing. Maximum running speed, jumping height, reaction time, bite force, all analyzed and marked as dangerous. They have binocular vision, evolved for tracking prey. They can see in low light conditions. Their hearing range includes frequencies most species cannot detect. They have an enhanced ability to detect chemical signatures, what they call smell, which allows them to track targets across kilometers. And perhaps most dangerously, they are pack hunters with complex social bonding. Vaxil turned to face the cadets directly, his four eyes sweeping across the room. Jinho kept his gaze on the datapad, pretending to take notes. Humans will pack bond with anything, the commander said. They adopt natural predators as companions. They form emotional attachments to their weapons, their vehicles, even plants. This behavior makes them unpredictable in first contact scenarios. They do not think like other species. They see potential allies everywhere, even in beings that should be their natural enemies. The display showed footage from early contact scenarios. Humans greeting Valarathi diplomats with open hands and smiles. The commander explained how the smile, showing teeth, was actually a gesture of friendliness, not a threat display as logic would suggest. If you encounter humans in your service, remember this. They are Class 12 for a reason. They survived their world by becoming more dangerous than everything else on it. Treat them with respect and caution. Never assume they are weak because they appear friendly. And never, under any circumstances, threaten what they have bonded with. The lights came back up and cadets began gathering their things. The lecture was over. Around Gino, students whispered to each other, their voices mixing in a dozen different languages. He heard the fear, the fascination, the morbid curiosity about the Deathworlders who had joined the galactic community. Minho turned to him as they stood. Can you imagine meeting one? A real human? Jinho managed a weak smile, his heart still racing. Yeah, I can imagine. They filed out of the lecture hall with the others, and Gino felt the weight of his secret pressing down on him. 3 months of carefully hidden truth. 3 months of being just another cadet from a distant colony. 3 months of proving that humans could coexist peacefully. He hoped it would be enough. He hoped that when the truth came out, as it inevitably would, his classmates would remember the person he had been to them before they knew what he was. But hope, he knew, was not a plan. And plans had a way of falling apart when reality intervened. The zero-gravity training arena floated at the center of Proxima 7 Station, a massive sphere where cadets learned to operate in the vacuum conditions they might face during boarding actions or emergency repairs. Jinho floated near the middle, moving through the 3-dimensional obstacle course with practiced ease. Magnetic boots clipped to his belt clanked against his thigh as he pushed off a handrail and drifted toward the next checkpoint. Around him, other cadets struggled with the unfamiliar environment. Minho tumbled past, his sensor feathers flailing as he tried to orient himself. A Quillix cadet named Yuna clung to a support strut, her moth-like wings pressed flat against her back in distress. The Dravik students had an easier time, their multiple arms giving them more control. But even they moved with uncertainty. Sergeant Krell, a scarred Dravik with burn marks across 2 of his 6 arms, watched from the observation platform. His voice crackled through their helmet communicators. Focus on your center of mass. Small movements. Think before you push. In real vacuum, every mistake compounds. Jinho had to constantly remind himself to move slower than his instincts demanded. Zero gravity was almost natural to him. Earth's training programs started children in swimming pools, teaching them to move in 3 dimensions before they could even walk properly on land. Every human grew up understanding momentum and vectors in a way that most species only learned academically. He reached the checkpoint and tagged it, then oriented himself toward the equipment storage area where the next part of the exercise waited. The cadets were supposed to retrieve practice supply containers and move them to designated locations. Simple cargo handling, the kind of basic skill every officer needed. That was when the alarm sounded. A sharp, piercing tone cut through the communications channel. Warning lights flashed red throughout the arena. Jinho's eyes immediately tracked to the cargo area where the sound originated. He saw it happen in the fraction of a second before anyone else reacted. A magnetic clamp had failed on one of the storage racks. Not a practice container, but a real supply unit, 2 tons of medical equipment in a reinforced case. The clamp's failure sent it tumbling, spinning on 2 axes, directly toward a cluster of cadets near the far wall. Yuna was in its path. The small Quillix was still learning to move in zero gravity, and she had positioned herself badly, wedged between 2 structural beams with no clear escape route. She saw the container coming and froze, her compound eyes wide with panic. Jinho did not think. Thinking took time, and there was no time. His body moved on instinct, the same instinct that had kept humans alive on Earth for millions of years. The instinct that saw danger and calculated, intercept vectors without conscious thought. He kicked off hard from the checkpoint, much harder than he had allowed himself to move during the entire exercise. The force sent him rocketing across the arena like a missile. His trajectory was perfect, his body position streamlined to minimize air resistance. Around him, other cadets were just beginning to register the emergency, their reactions lagging behind his by critical seconds. The container was spinning, and Jinho adjusted mid-flight with a twist of his torso that would have been impossible for most species. He oriented his legs toward the nearest structural beam, timing his approach with precision that looked like luck was pure calculated physics. He hit the beam with both feet, bending his knees to absorb the impact. The force would have shattered a Velrathi's legs. It would have pulverized a Quillix. Even a Dravik would have suffered fractures. Jinho felt the impact jar through his bones, felt his muscles compress, and then release, converting his momentum into a new vector. He launched himself again, this time directly at the tumbling container. 2 tons of metal and equipment, spinning with enough force to crush anyone in its path. He extended his arms and hit it at an angle, his hands finding purchase on the container's surface. The momentum tried to rip him away, tried to send him spinning, but his grip held that every cadet in the arena stopped moving. They watched as Jinho wrapped himself around the container, his arms and legs locking into position. He was using the container's own spin, redirecting it, bleeding off its momentum with his body as the shock absorber. His boots found a structural point on the container's surface, and he pushed, changing its trajectory, degree by degree, that the container's spin slowed. Its path curved away from Yuna, away from the wall, into open space where it could be safely intercepted. Jinho rode it like a piece of debris, his body taking punishment that should have knocked him unconscious. Until finally he brought it to a complete stop against a support strut. He held it there, both arms wrapped around the container, both legs braced against the strut, keeping the massive weight from drifting free again. His breathing was heavy inside his helmet, but he was conscious, alert, unbroken. Silence filled the communications channel. Every cadet, every instructor, every observer in the station's control room was watching. Jinho looked across the arena to where Yuna still clung to the structural beams. Her compound eyes were fixed on him, her small body trembling. "Are you okay?" Jinho asked, his voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Yuna could not speak. She just nodded, a very human gesture she had picked up from somewhere. Sergeant Krell's voice broke the silence. "All cadets, exercise terminated. Return to the entry locks immediately. Cadet Jinho, maintain position until recovery team arrives. Medical team to the arena. Possible injuries." The sergeant's voice was carefully controlled, professionally neutral. But Jinho heard the undertone, the questions that were forming. He had just done something impossible. Not difficult, not impressive. Impossible. The other cadets began moving toward the exits. But slowly, their attention still fixed on Jinho. He saw Minho floating nearby. His sensor feathers spread wide in shock. The Valrathi was a physics student, one of the top in their class. He would already be running the calculations in his head. Mass, velocity, force of impact. The numbers would not make sense. 2 recovery specialists arrived with magnetic tethers and secured the container. They worked quickly, efficiently, but Jinho noticed how they kept their distance from him, how their hands never quite touched his suit. Once the container was secured, one of them gestured toward the exit. "Medical bay. Sergeant's orders." Jinho nodded and pushed off gently, moving toward the exit lock with the same careful control he had maintained for 3 months. But the damage was done. They had seen. In that moment of crisis, he had forgotten to be weak, forgotten to be slow, forgotten to be anything but what he really was. The arena observation deck was packed with students and instructors watching the recorded footage. The video played again and again from multiple angles. Enhanced slow motion showed details that the real-time action had hidden. The force of Jinho's initial push, the impossible mid-air adjustment, the impact with the beam that should have crippled him, the way he had redirected 2 tons of spinning metal like it was nothing. Someone ran the footage through a movement analysis program. The results appeared on screens throughout the station's network. The program compared Jinho's performance to every known species in the galactic database. It analyzed bone density requirements, muscle efficiency, reaction times, spatial awareness, pain tolerance. 1 match returned. Confidence level, 97%. Species, human. Classification, Class 12. Deathworld Extreme, that the word spread through the station faster than light itself. Cadets huddled in common rooms, watching the footage on their personal devices. Instructors gathered in emergency meetings. Security protocols were quietly activated, though no one was quite sure what threat they were protecting against. Jinho sat in the medical bay while a Velrathi doctor scanned him, with instruments that showed his bone density, his muscle structure, his cardiovascular system, everything they had been taught to fear in Commander Vaxil's lecture. The doctor worked in silence, his sensor feathers flat against his head. "No injuries," the doctor finally said. "Not even bruising. Your skeletal structure is ... remarkably dense. Your muscle tissue has a tensile strength I have never seen outside of Dravic warriors. And your cardiovascular system operates at efficiency levels that should not be possible." Jinho said nothing. There was nothing to say. The truth was written in every cell of his body. Sergeant Krell entered the medical bay, accompanied by 2 security officers. They were not Dravic or Velrathi. They were a species Jinho did not recognize, heavily armored, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. "Cadet Jinho," Krell said formally, "you are to report to the Commandant's office immediately. These officers will escort you." Jinho stood slowly, making his movements obvious and non-threatening. He had been trained for this possibility. They all had, the 4 humans placed in different academies across the sector. But training for a moment and living through it were very different things. As he walked through the corridors of the station, flanked by armed guards, other cadets pressed themselves against the walls to let them pass. Some stared with open curiosity, others with fear, a few with something that might have been awe. Minho was waiting near the Commandant's office. He stood alone, his sensor feathers quivering with agitation. When Jinho approached, the guards stopped, allowing the briefest moment of interaction. "Is it true?" Minho asked. His voice was quiet, meant only for Jinho. "The analysis. Are you really?" Jinho met his friend's eyes. After 3 months of deception, he owed Minho honesty. Yes, Minho's feathers drooped. He looked away, processing the information. When he looked back, his expression was unreadable. "You saved Yuna's life. I did what anyone would do." "No," Minho said. "No one else could have done what you did. That is the problem, is it not? You could do it, so you did it. And now everyone knows." The security guards moved forward, indicating the conversation was over. Jinho walked through the doors to the Commandant's office, leaving his friend behind. The truth was out. There was no taking it back, no hiding again. Everything that happened next would determine not just his own fate, but the fate of human integration into the galaxy. He had saved a life. But perhaps, in doing so, he had doomed the very thing he was sent to protect. The Commandant's office was larger than Jinho expected, with high ceilings designed to accommodate species of varying heights. Commandant Sarah stood behind her desk. All 4 of her eyes focused on him with an intensity that made even his predator instincts nervous. She was old for a Velrathi, her sensor feathers almost completely gray, but her posture showed no weakness. Behind her, the viewport displayed the endless stars and the distant glow the station's defense perimeter. The 2 security guards positioned themselves on either side of the door. They did not point their weapons at Jinho, but their hands rested near the triggers. Ready, always ready. "Sit," Sarah said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Jinho sat carefully, aware that even this simple action was being analyzed. How much force did he use? How did the chair respond to his weight? Every movement was data now, evidence of what he was. Sarah's sensor feathers spread slightly, tasting the air between them. Jinho knew what that meant. She was reading his chemical signals, the involuntary responses that most species could not control. Lies smelled different than truth to a Valrathi. Fear had a distinct signature. Aggression could be detected before it manifested in action. "Your real name is Jinho?" Sarah said. It was not a question. Born on Earth, specifically in the Eastern Territories. Age 22 standard years. You enlisted in Earth's integration program 6 months ago and were placed here under false documentation as a Colony World student. Is this accurate? Yes, Commandant. There are 3 others like you in different academies across this sector. Different names, different backgrounds, but all human. All here to prove that your species can integrate peacefully with galactic society. Again, Jinho could only nod. The intelligence reports had clearly been thorough. He wondered if they had always known, if this had been a test from the beginning. But no, the shock on the security officers' faces when the analysis came back told him this was real surprise. Sarah sat down, her 4 eyes never leaving him. The integration program was classified at the highest levels. Only council members and select military intelligence officers knew about it. I was not among them. My staff was not informed. You were placed in my academy without my knowledge or consent, and I find that deeply troubling. I understand, Commandant. Do you? 2 of her eyes narrowed, while the other 2 remained wide, a Valrathi expression of skepticism. Your presence here violates several regulations. Falsified enrollment documentation, concealment of species classification, unauthorized access to military training facilities. Any one of these charges could result in expulsion and criminal prosecution. Jinho kept his hands flat on his thighs, a non-threatening posture. He focused on keeping his breathing steady, his heart rate controlled. I was following orders from my superiors on Earth, but I accept responsibility for my actions. Your actions, Sarah repeated. She activated a holographic display that showed the footage from the training arena. The video played again, showing Jinho's impossible intercept of the cargo container. You saved Cadet Yuna's life. The impact force alone should have killed you. The container's spin should have torn your arms from their sockets. Instead, you stopped it like it was nothing. It was not nothing, Commandant. It hurt, but pain is just information. Sarah's feathers twitched, a sign of interest. Explain. On Earth, we learn early that pain tells you something is wrong, but it does not control you. You can function through pain if necessary. That container would have killed Yuna. My discomfort was not important compared to her life. Yet you hid what you were capable of for 3 months. Why reveal it now? Because hiding it would have meant watching someone die. I could not do that. The Commandant stood and walked to the viewport, her back to Jinho. Outside, the station's exterior lights created a halo effect against the darkness of space. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost contemplative. I have been in command of this academy for 18 years. I have trained thousands of officers from dozens of species. I have seen bravery, cowardice, brilliance, and stupidity. But I have never had to decide what to do with a Class 12 Deathworlder who voluntarily enrolled in my programs. She turned back to face him. The easy decision is to expel you immediately. Send you back to Earth with a full report on your deception. The integration program would be over, and humans would be marked as untrustworthy. Is that what you want? No, Commandant. Then tell me why I should let you stay. Tell me why I should risk my career, my academy's reputation, and potentially the safety of my students by keeping you here. Jinho chose his words carefully. This moment was more important than the physical test in the arena. This was the real examination, the one that would determine if humans had a place in galactic society. For 3 months, I attended classes with other cadets. I studied alongside Valarathi, Quillix, and Dravik students. I helped Yuna with astrogation when she struggled with spatial mathematics. I trained with Minho in combat simulations. I shared meals in the common area and laughed at jokes I barely understood. For 3 months, I was just another cadet. He met her 4 eyes directly, something considered challenging among Velrathi, but necessary for humans to show sincerity. They did not fear me when they did not know what I was. They saw me as a person first. That is what the integration program is trying to prove. That we can be colleagues, friends, allies. Not just the monsters from the safety lectures. Sarah's sensor feathers flattened, then spread again in a pattern Gino had learned meant deep thought. You are asking me to judge you on your actions, not your species classification. Yes, and yet your species classification is precisely what makes you dangerous. You have the strength to kill everyone in this room without weapons. Your reflexes are faster than our security systems. Your endurance means you could fight for hours while others collapse from exhaustion. These are facts, not fears. They are facts, Gino agreed. But they do not define my intentions. A Dravic warrior has 6 arms and can wield 6 weapons simultaneously. Yet we trust them as officers because we judge their character, not their capability for violence. I am asking for the same consideration. Dravics have been part of galactic society for thousands of years. They have earned that trust through consistent behavior across generations. Your species achieved faster than light travel less than a decade ago. We have no historical precedent for trusting humans. Then let me be that precedent. Let the 4 of us in this program show what humans can be when given the chance. Sarah returned to her desk and pulled up additional files. Jinho saw footage of himself in various situations over the past 3 months. Tutoring Yuna in the library. Training with Mino in the simulator. Volunteering for extra maintenance duty when one of the station's recycling systems malfunctioned. Every moment had been recorded, he realized. Not because they suspected him specifically, but because every cadet was monitored as part of Academy security protocols. Your performance has been exceptional, Sarah said, reviewing the files. Top marks in combat theory, stellar navigation, and tactical analysis. Satisfactory in cultural studies and diplomacy. Your instructors report that you are helpful to other students, respectful to authority, and demonstrate consistent ethical judgment in simulation scenarios. She closed the files and looked at him directly. You have been an ideal cadet in every measurable way. But measurements cannot account for the fear that your species generates. The station network is currently filled with discussions about you. Some cadets are demanding your expulsion. Others are defending you. The Academy is divided, and that division threatens the cohesion necessary for military training. What will you decide, Commandant? Sarah's feathers rippled in a pattern that showed resignation. I am going to do something unprecedented. I am going to allow you to remain at this academy under strict conditions. You will continue your training, but you will also become a test case. Your behavior will be scrutinized more closely than any cadet in the Academy's history. One mistake, one hint of aggression or deception, and you will be removed immediately. Jinho felt relief wash through him, but he kept his expression neutral. I understand. Additionally, the integration program will be officially acknowledged. The other 3 human cadets will be revealed at their respective academies. This was always going to happen eventually, but your actions have accelerated the timeline. Earth's government has been notified and has agreed to full transparency going forward. Thank you, Commandant. Do not thank me yet. The difficult part is not my decision. It is what happens next. You must return to your classes, your training, your daily life. But now everyone knows what you are. How they respond, how you handle that response, will determine whether this integration program succeeds or fails. She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. The security guards straightened, ready to escort Jinho out. But Sarah raised one hand, stopping them. One more thing, Cadet Jinho. That container in the training arena weighed 2 tons. Our analysis shows it was spinning with enough force to kill on impact. You stopped it with your bare hands and suffered no significant injury. I need to know, was that the limit of your capability, or could you have done more? Jinho considered lying, considered softening the truth. But they would know. The Velrafe could smell deception, and the medical scans had already revealed much of what he could do. I could have done more, Commandant. That was difficult, but not my limit. Sarah's feathers flattened completely, a sign of genuine alarm. I see. Then let us hope no situation arises where you must show us what your limit actually is. The security guards escorted him out of the office. As the doors closed behind him, Jinho saw Sarah return to her viewport, staring out at the stars. She looked suddenly older, burdened with a decision that might define her legacy. Minho was still waiting in the corridor outside. He had not left, despite the security presence and the obvious risk of being associated with Jinho now. When their eyes met, something passed between them. Not understanding yet, not complete acceptance, but not rejection either. They are letting you stay? Minho asked. For now. Good. Then you can help me understand this formula in advanced physics. I have been staring at it for 2 days and cannot make it work. It was such a normal request, such an ordinary moment of friendship, that Jinho almost laughed. Instead, he just nodded. I will try. Though I should warn you, physics on Earth works the same as physics everywhere else. If the formula is not working, you might just be using it wrong. Minho's sensor feathers perked up slightly. Now you sound like the insufferable study partner I have tolerated for 3 months. Come, let us see if your Deathworld brain can actually help. They walked together through the corridors, aware of the stares from other cadets, but choosing to ignore them. Behind them, the security guards followed at a discreet distance. The test had passed its first stage. But Jinho knew the real challenges were only beginning. The station's network buzzed with activity. Videos, debates, arguments, and discussions about the human among them. Some voices called for his removal. Others urged caution and fairness. And a few, just a few, began to ask the question that would define everything that came next. If humans were truly as dangerous as the lectures claimed, why had this one chosen? To save rather than harm? And what did that choice reveal about the difference between capability and intent? Part 4. The Academy Commons area was usually a place of casual mixing, where cadets from different species shared meals and conversation during their limited free time. Today, it felt like a battlefield drawn along invisible lines. Clusters of cadets sat separately, their groups divided by opinion rather than species. Some tables held students who supported Jinho's continued presence. Others gathered those who demanded his removal. In between, the uncertain majority watched and waited. Jinho sat with Minho at a table near the viewports. Yuna had joined them, her small frame perched on a seat modified for Quillick's anatomy. Her compound eyes constantly tracked the room, nervous and alert. The 3 of them formed a small island in the storm of controversy surrounding them. They are calling for a formal hearing, Minho said quietly, picking at his meal without much appetite. His sensor feathers kept twitching toward the other tables, monitoring the chemical signals of aggression and fear that filled the room. The Cadet Council wants to vote on whether you should be allowed to remain. The Commandant already decided, Yuna said, her translator rendering her clicking speech patterns into Galactic Standard. Is that not enough? Not for everyone, Minho replied. Some students feel the decision was made without proper input. They want their voices heard. Jinho understood. Democracy required that everyone feel heard, even when their fears were being challenged. When is the hearing? Tomorrow evening. They are organizing it now. Representatives from each faction will speak. Minho's feathers drooped slightly. Taiho is leading the opposition group, The name carried weight. Tai-Ha was a Velrathi cadet from one of the outer colonies, a settlement that had suffered during humanity's chaotic first contact with galactic society. Ships lost, resources seized, misunderstandings that had nearly escalated into violence before diplomats intervened. Tai-Ho had been young when it happened, but his family had been directly affected. To him, humans were not an abstract concept. They were the cause of real pain. "I do not blame him," Gino said. "If someone from a species that had hurt my people showed up pretending to be something else, I would be angry too." "But you saved my life," Yuna said firmly. "That should mean something." "It means something to you." To Tai-Ho, it might look like I was simply protecting my cover story. Or worse, that I am dangerous enough to stop a cargo container, but chose to hide among them anyway. The conversation paused as a group of Dravik cadets walked past their table. One of them, a large warrior named Hyuk, stopped. His 6 arms were crossed in a pattern that showed respect among his people. "Cadet Jino," Hyuk said in his deep, rumbling voice. "I watched the footage from the training arena. What you did was impressive. On my world, we would honor such strength with ceremony." "Thank you," Jino replied, unsure where this was going. "But I am confused. You hid your abilities for 3 months. You let others think you were weak. Among Draviks, this would be considered cowardly. Why hide strength?" It was a fair question, asked without hostility. Hyuk genuinely wanted to understand. Jinho appreciated that more than the Dravik probably realized. On Earth, we have a saying: the strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. I was not hiding because I was cowardly. I was hiding to prove that humans could be trusted to control their strength, that we do not need to dominate others just because we can. Hyuk's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "This is a strange philosophy, but I think I understand. You chose to be weak to show you could choose to be strong, a test of self-control." "Yes, exactly that." The Dravik nodded once, a gesture he had learned from watching humans in galactic broadcasts. "Then I will speak for you at the hearing. Not all strength is shown in muscle." He walked away, his massive frame drawing respectful distance from other cadets. "That is one vote in your favor," Minot said. "But there will be many against." The next day crawled past with painful slowness. Jinho attended his classes as scheduled, but the atmosphere was tense. Instructors taught their material with professional detachment, but their sensor organs and body language revealed uncertainty. During combat simulation training, Jinho was paired with a practice drone instead of another cadet. The instructor did not explain why, but the reason was obvious. No one wanted to risk a sparring match with the human. Evening came, and the main assembly hall filled with cadets. The space was designed for academy-wide announcements and could hold nearly 500 students. Tonight, it was packed. Every seat taken, every standing space occupied. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. A stage had been set up at the front, with seats for the Cadet Council representatives. Commandant Terra stood to one side, observing but not participating. This was student business, and she would respect their process unless safety became an issue. Tai-Ho stepped forward first. He was young for a Velrathi officer candidate, his sensor feathers still showing the bright colors of youth. But his voice was steady and clear as he addressed the assembly. 3 months ago, a human infiltrated this academy. He lied on his enrollment documents. He concealed his species classification. He trained alongside us, learned our weaknesses, studied our tactics. And we accepted him because we did not know what he was. The words hung in the air, each one chosen for maximum impact. Tai-Hao was a skilled speaker, Jinho realized. This was not emotional ranting. This was calculated persuasion. "I come from Colony Thetanine. 5 years ago, human ships arrived in our system. They did not understand our communication protocols. They did not follow established first contact procedures. Their weapon systems powered up during negotiations because they thought it was a show of strength. Our defense forces interpreted it as aggression. Shots were fired. 3 of our vessels were destroyed before we realized it was a misunderstanding. Tai-Ho's sensor feathers flattened against his head. My uncle was on one of those ships. He died because humans do not think like we do. They are aggressive, impulsive, and dangerous. They see threats everywhere because they evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. And now we are supposed to trust one of them in our academy, in our training programs, learning how we fight and how we defend ourselves. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jinho sat quietly, listening. Every word Tai-Ho spoke was true. The incident at Fate 9 had happened. People had died. The fear was justified. I am not asking you to hate humans, Tai-Ho continued. I am asking you to recognize that trust must be earned, and it cannot be earned through deception. Cadet Jinho may have saved Yuna's life, and I am grateful for that. But one good action does not erase 3 months of lies. It does not address the fundamental question. Can we trust a species that is built for violence to control that violence? In every situation? He sat down, and the assembly erupted in discussion. Some cadets stood and applauded. Others remained silent, considering his words. The cadet council chair, a Velrathi named Somin, called for order. We will now hear from those who support Cadet Jinho's continued enrollment. Yuna stood, and the room quieted. She was so small compared to most species represented here, her moth-like features delicate and fragile-looking. But her voice came through the translation system with unexpected strength. I am alive because of Jinho. That cargo container would have crushed me. I would have died in that training arena, and it would have been listed as an equipment malfunction. Just another accident. No one would have blamed anyone because accidents happen. She walked closer to the stage, her wings rustling with agitation. But Jinho did not let it happen. He saw the danger, calculated the risk, and acted. He put himself between me and death without hesitation. Yes, he is strong. Yes, he is capable of violence. But he chose protection over self-preservation. That is not the action of someone we should fear. That is the action of someone we should hope to serve alongside. Minho stood next. His censer feathers spread wide, a Velrathi gesture of honesty and openness. I have been Jinho's friend for 3 months. I studied with him, ate with him, argued with him about physics and tactics and the terrible food in the commons area. When I learned what he was, I felt betrayed. I felt lied to. And I was angry. He paused, looking at Jinho directly. But then I remembered something. Every time we studied together, Jinho was patient. Every time I made a mistake in simulations, he helped me understand without judgment. When I was frustrated with a difficult course, he listened and offered encouragement. The person I knew for 3 months did not change when I learned his species. Only my perception changed. Hyuk stood next, his massive form drawing every eye in the room. Draviks are Class 11. We are bred for war. We have 6 arms that can each wield weapons independently. Our natural armor can stop small arms fire. We are dangerous, yet you trust us. Why? Because we have proven our character through action. His mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Jinho has proven his character. He controlled his strength when he could have dominated. He helped when he could have harmed. He saved a life when it would have been safer to protect his secret. Judge him on his actions, not your fears. More cadets spoke, some for and some against. The debate went on for over an hour, with arguments becoming more heated as time passed. Finally, Sonin called for a final statement. She looked at Jinho. Cadet Jinho, you have heard the concerns and the support. Do you wish to address the assembly? Jinho stood slowly. He had prepared no speech, rehearsed no grand statements. He walked to the front of the hall and faced his fellow cadets. Taiho is right. The incident at Theta 9 happened because my people made mistakes. We were new to galactic society, and we did not understand your protocols. People died, and that is a tragedy that cannot be undone. I am sorry for your loss. I am sorry for the pain my species caused. He took a breath, choosing his next words carefully. I cannot change what happened. I cannot make you forget your fears. But I can show you who I am. For 3 months, I was your classmate, your study partner, your friend. I did not pretend to be kind. I did not fake patience or compassion. Those are who I am, regardless of my species. He pulled off his jacket, then his shirt, revealing the scars across his torso. The assembly gasped. The scars were extensive, evidence of severe trauma. These are from a mining accident on Earth when I was 14. A tunnel collapsed. I was trapped for 3 days with 2 others. One was a woman named Mireille. The other was a boy named Doyun. We had limited oxygen, no food, no certainty that rescue would come. His voice remained steady. I could have used my strength to try to dig out alone. I might have made it, but that would have meant leaving them behind. Instead, we rationed the oxygen. We took turns resting. We told stories to stay calm. And when rescue finally came, all 3 of us survived. Not because I was strong, but because we chose to protect each other. He put his shirt back on. I am from a death world. My body is built to survive conditions that would kill most species here. But being built for survival does not mean being built for violence. It means having the strength to protect, the endurance to persist, and the will to choose what kind of person you want to be. He looked at Taiho directly. You asked if you can trust a species built for violence. I ask you, can you trust anyone? Every species here is capable of harm. Dravix can kill with their 6 arms. Valrathi can sense your chemical signals and manipulate your emotions. Quillix can infiltrate spaces too small for security measures. We are all dangerous in our own ways. The question is not capability. The question is choice. He addressed the entire assembly now. I choose to be someone you can trust. I choose to use my strength to protect, not to threaten. I choose to be honest, starting now, even if that honesty makes you uncomfortable. Judge me on my choices. If I fail to live up to them, then remove me. But give me the chance to prove that humans can be more than your fears. Silence filled the hall. Then Soman stood. The council will now vote. All cadets will submit their decision through the secure network within the next hour. Majority decision will be honored by the Academy administration. The assembly dispersed slowly. Cadets filed out in groups, some animated in discussion, others quiet and thoughtful. Jinho returned to his quarters and waited. An hour later, the results appeared on his personal display. The vote was close. 62% in favor of allowing him to remain, 38% against. Not a landslide, but enough. He was staying. For now. But the real test, he knew, was still ahead. Hash Part 5, 2 weeks passed after the vote. The Academy settled into an uneasy new normal. Jinho attended classes openly as a human, no longer hiding his capabilities, but still exercising constant restraint. Some cadets went out of their way to avoid him. Others made awkward attempts at friendship, clearly fascinated by the Deathworlder in their midst. A few, like Minho and Yuna, treated him exactly as they always had. Taiyo kept his distance, but no longer actively campaigned against Jinho's presence. They passed each other in corridors with neutral nods, an unspoken agreement to coexist, if not cooperate. It was not friendship, but it was not open hostility either. Progress, Jinho supposed, came in small steps, Then the alarm sounded. It was midday when the station's defense systems activated. Klaxons blared through every corridor, and red warning lights bathed the walls in crimson. Jinho was in the combat theory classroom when it happened. The instructor, a Velrothi lieutenant named Bora, immediately pulled up the tactical display. All cadets to your stations. This is not a drill. We have an unidentified vessel approaching at combat speed. The station's main defense fleet was patrolling the outer system, 3 hours away at maximum burn. The Academy maintained a small security force for emergencies, but it was designed to handle minor threats and maintain order, not fight off a serious attack. The tactical display showed a ship dropping out of hyperspace dangerously close to the station. Its configuration matched known Krath pirate vessels, outdated military hardware from the border wars, heavily modified and heavily armed. As they watched, the ship broadcast a simple message in broken galactic standard. Station Proxima 7. We require supplies, medical equipment, fuel cells, food stores. You will transfer immediately, or we will fire on student quarters. You have 10 minutes to comply. The threat was clear and brutal. Pirates rarely attacked military stations, but Academy stations were softer targets. They housed cadets, not hardened soldiers. The calculation was simple. Threaten the students, and the adults would fold. Usually, it worked. Commandant Sarah's voice came through the station-wide communications. All cadets are to proceed to emergency shelters immediately. Security teams to defense positions. This is a code red situation. Jinho moved with the flow of students toward the designated shelter areas, but his mind was racing. 10 minutes was not enough time for the defense fleet to return. The station's security forces were limited. If the pirates actually opened fire on student quarters, the shielding might hold for a while, but eventually it would fail. People would die. He diverted from the crowd and headed toward the security command center. 2 guards tried to stop him, but Lieutenant Bora appeared and waved them aside. Let him through. The commandant is expecting him. The command center was chaos controlled by professional calm. Officers worked their stations while tactical displays showed the pirate ship maneuvering into attack position. Sarah stood at the center, her 4 eyes tracking multiple screens simultaneously. Cadet Jinho, she said without looking at him. I am about to make a decision that will either save this station or end my career. I need to know if I can trust you. You can, Commandant. The pirates are preparing to dock at Bay 7. They will board and attempt to seize our supply areas by force. Our security teams are good, but they are spread thin protecting the student shelters. I need someone who can hold a choke point against superior numbers long enough for reinforcements to arrive. She finally looked at him, all 4 eyes focused with terrible intensity. I need a Class 12 Deathworlder to show me what that classification really means. Can you do this? Jinho felt his heart rate increase, felt the adrenaline beginning to surge. This was what he had been training for his entire life. Not to hide, not to blend in, but to protect. Yes, Commandant. What are my orders? Bay 7 has a narrow access corridor. Hold it. Keep the pirates from reaching the supply areas and the student shelters beyond. Lethal force is authorized, but use restraint when possible. I am assigning you a team. The door opened and 6 cadets entered. Minho, Yuna, Hyuk, and 3 others Jinho recognized from his classes. Behind them, unexpectedly, came Tai-Ho. We volunteered, Minho said simply. His sensor feathers were flattened with fear, but his voice was steady. You should not face this alone. Tai-Ho met Jinho's eyes. I do not trust your species yet, but I trust what you did for Yuna. That earns you this much. Sarah handed Jinho a weapons authorization code. You have 15 minutes before they breach. Get to Bay 7 and prepare. May fortune favor you all. They ran through the corridors, the station's artificial gravity making it feel surreal. Just weeks ago, they had been students worried about exams and training exercises. Now they were being sent into actual combat. The security armory issued them equipment, light armor, energy weapons, tactical communicators. Jinho took a standard rifle and a combat knife, nothing special. He would not need anything more. Bay 7's access corridor was exactly as Sarah described. It was a maintenance passage, 3 meters wide and 20 meters long, with support struts creating natural cover points. One entrance from the docking bay, one exit toward the station interior. A perfect choke point for anyone who knew how to use it. They set up defensive positions quickly. Heek's massive frame blocked the left side, his 6 arms allowing him to operate multiple weapons. Minho and 2 other cadets took cover behind the right side struts. Yuna positioned herself at the rear with a long-range energy rifle, her small size allowing her to find firing angles others could not. Taiho set up in the center with Jinho, his sensor feathers spread to detect any chemical signals from approaching enemies. They will have numbers on us, Hyuk said, checking his weapons. Pirates fight without honor. They will use grenades, suppressing fire, anything to overwhelm us. Then we make them pay for every meter, Jinho replied. He checked his rifle's charge and found a position that gave him clear sight lines down the corridor. His hands were steady despite the adrenaline. This was what Earth's gravity had trained him for. This was what his evolution had prepared him to face. The station shuddered as the pirate ship docked. Cutting torches sparked against the outer airlock, and then the seal broke. Atmosphere rushed into vacuum for a moment before emergency systems compensated. Through their tactical displays, they saw the pirates boarding. 12 Krath warriors, their insectoid bodies armored and armed with military-grade weapons. The first one through the corridor entrance died before he realized there was resistance. Yuna's shot took him in the center mass, and he dropped without a sound. The others behind him scattered, taking cover at the corridor entrance. Contact! Taiho shouted, and the battle began. Energy bolts filled the corridor with deadly light. The pirates opened up with suppressing fire, trying to force the defenders to keep their heads down. But Jinho did not duck. He stood his ground, his rifle tracking targets with precision that made the others stare even in the middle of combat. One shot, one pirate down. Another shot, another target eliminated. His breathing was controlled, his movements efficient. No wasted motion, no panic. A Krath berserker charged forward, its mandibles spreading in a war scream. It was huge, even for a Krath, its body mass enhanced with combat drugs that made it feel no pain. Heek's weapon's fire struck it multiple times, but it kept coming. Jinho dropped his rifle and moved forward. The others shouted warnings, but he was already in motion. He met the berserker halfway down the corridor, his combat knife in one hand. The creature swung at him with claws that could tear through armor, but Jinho was faster. He ducked under the swing, came up inside the creature's guard, and drove his knife into the gap between its armor plates. The berserker tried to grab him with its secondary arms, but Jinho was already moving. He twisted the knife, stepped back, and let the creature's momentum carry it past him. It crashed into the wall and slumped down, its nervous system finally catching up to the damage. Fall back. The pirate commander's voice crackled through their translators. They have a Deathworlder. Fall back to the ship. But Jinho did not give them the chance. He advanced down the corridor, his movements predatory and precise. He was no longer the careful student who hid his capabilities. He was what Commander Vaxil had described in that lecture, a persistence hunter, evolved to chase prey until it could not run anymore. The pirates broke. They scrambled back toward their ship, firing wildly behind them. 2 more fell to Yuna's precise shots. One tried to make a stand and was cut down by concentrated fire from Minho and the others. The rest made it back to their ship and immediately began emergency disconnect procedures. The pirate vessel pulled away from the station, its engines burning hard as it accelerated. Through the command center's displays, they watched it jump to hyperspace, fleeing before the defense fleet could return. Silence filled the corridor. The defenders remained at their positions, weapons still raised, adrenaline still surging. Then slowly, carefully, they lowered their weapons and looked at each other. They were alive. All of them. Not even seriously wounded. Jinho stood in the center of the corridor, his knife still in his hand, breathing hard. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind the bone-deep fatigue that always followed combat. He had not killed unnecessarily. Every action had been measured, controlled, even in the chaos of battle. But he had shown them what he was capable of when protection was required. Date Ho approached slowly. His sensor feathers were spread wide, reading Jinho's chemical signals. Fear, exhaustion, relief. No aggression. No pleasure in violence. Just a person who had done what needed to be done. You could have killed them all, Taiyo said quietly, but you let them run. Killing is only necessary when there is no other option. They ran. That was option enough. Hugh laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed in the corridor. On my world, we would write songs about this defense. 7 cadets against 12 pirates, and we did not lose a single person. This is a victory worth celebrating. Security teams arrived and secured the area. Medical personnel checked everyone for injuries. Commandant Sarah appeared, her sensor feathers showing visible relief when she saw them all standing. Casualty report? She asked the security chief. No friendly casualties, Commandant. 4 enemy casualties. 8 fled. The station is secure. Sarah looked at Jinho for a long moment. You held the line. We held the line, Commandant. All of us? Yes, she agreed, looking at the others. Yes, you did. The next 3 weeks were surreal. The story of the defense spread through the academy and then beyond, carried on news feeds and military reports across the sector. 7 cadets, including 1 human, had defended an entire station against pirate raiders. The footage from the corridor security cameras showed everything. Jinho's precision, his restraint, his protection of his fellow cadets, even while engaging the enemy. The debate about human integration shifted. It was no longer theoretical. They had seen what a human could do when protecting others versus hunting them. The difference was clear, and it was profound. More cadets began approaching Jinho in the commons area. Not with fear, but with curiosity and respect. They wanted to know about Earth, about human culture, about what it was like growing up on a death world. He answered their questions honestly, no longer hiding anything. The formal recognition ceremony was held in the main assembly hall. Commandant Sarah presented combat honors to all 7 defenders. When she placed the medal on Jinho's uniform, she spoke quietly so only he could hear. You proved something important today, not just to this academy, but to the galaxy. You proved that being dangerous and being trustworthy are not opposites. They can exist in the same person, and it is our choices that define which one we are. Thank you, Commandant. The integration program will continue. The other human cadets have also been officially recognized at their academies. Some face more resistance than others, but your actions here have given them all a foundation to build on. That evening, Jinho sat in the commons area with Minho, Yuna, Yuk, and several others who had become regular companions. Taiho approached their table and stood awkwardly for a moment before speaking. May I join you? Of course, Jinho said, gesturing to an empty seat. Taiho sat down, his sensor feathers twitching with uncertainty. I owe you an apology. I judged you based on fear of what your species represents, not on who you are as an individual. That was wrong. Your fear was based on real experience. You do not need to apologize for that. Perhaps not for the fear, but for not giving you the chance to show who you are beyond it. For that, I am sorry. They shared a meal together, the conversation gradually becoming easier and more natural. Around them, the commons area buzzed with the usual activity of cadet life. Arguments about coursework, complaints about training schedules, laughter over shared jokes. Jinho was part of it now, fully and openly. 3 months ago, he had arrived at this station carrying the weight of an entire species' reputation. He had hidden what he was, hoping to prove humans could integrate peacefully. Then circumstances forced him to reveal himself, and he had worried that fear would define how others saw him forever. But he had been wrong. Fear could be overcome through consistent action. Trust could be built even between species that seemed impossibly different. And perhaps most importantly, being built for violence did not mean choosing violence. It meant having the strength to protect those who could not protect themselves. Commander Vaxil was giving his standard xenobiology lecture to a new group of first-year cadets. Jinho sat in the back row, listening with Minho beside him. When the lecture reached the section on Class 12 Deathworlders, Vaxil paused and pulled up new footage. It showed Jinho during the pirate attack, defending the corridor alongside his fellow cadets. The commander's voice was thoughtful as he addressed the class. Yes, humans are Class 12 Deathworlders. They are dangerous, resilient, and capable of extreme violence. But they are also capable of extreme loyalty, self-sacrifice, and compassion. The galaxy needs to learn the difference between a predator and a protector. Sometimes they are the same being, and it is up to us to decide which one we call forth through how we treat them. He looked directly at Jinho in the back row. We have a human cadet among us today. His name is Jinho, and he has proven that the classification of Deathworlder describes capability, not intent. Let his presence remind you that every species, every individual, deserves to be judged by their actions and choices, not by assumptions based on fear. After the lecture, several new cadets approached Jinho with questions. He answered them patiently, no longer worried about revealing too much or seeming too strong. He was who he was, and that was finally enough. That night, he sent a message back to Earth, to the integration program coordinators. He told them about the vote, the pirate attack, and the slow building of trust. He told them it was working. Difficult, yes. Requiring constant effort and patience, absolutely. But possible. Humans had a place in the galactic community, not as monsters to be feared or curiosities to be studied, but as colleagues, friends, and protectors. The road ahead would be long, with many more challenges to overcome. But for the first time since leaving Earth, Jinho felt genuinely hopeful about the future. He sat by his window and looked out at the stars. The same stars that shone over Earth, over the Academy, over the countless worlds of the galactic community. Somewhere out there, 3 other humans were having their own struggles and successes, building their own bridges between species. They were all part of something larger than themselves. They were proving that despite evolution, despite differences in biology and culture, despite fear and misunderstanding, beings from different worlds could choose to stand together when it mattered. And in the end, that choice was what truly defined a person, regardless of what planet they called home.